Welcome to Psalm 55, Betrayal by a Friend. It begins, Is totelos, en imnis synesios to Asaph. Enotise o Theos tin prosefkin mu, ke mi hyperidis tin theis mu. To the director among the imnis, again hymns, transliteration there, of contemplation, and we went through that in the past, contemplation, and this is what hymns are all about, not repetition. And it's attributed to Asaph, who is attributed a few of the Psalms. It starts, give ear, O God, my prayer, prosefhi mu, and you should not overlook my they sin, supplication. Prayer and supplication. Where do we see this? I was thinking about it, and I see it in the Lord's Prayer. And there is two versions of the Lord's Prayer. One is in Matthew 6, 9 to 13, and the other is Luke 11, 2 to 4. And I have them broken down into 9 instances or sections. And the number, and then with Matthew or Luke's version. And you can see there we have acknowledgement, prosevki, acknowledgement, and then supplication, deisin, are both within the Lord's Prayer, and thanksgiving, but it's not within the Lord's Prayer, but generally thanking God is prayer. We thank God before we eat and so forth, go to sleep, wake up. And it begins in Matthew, our Father, the one in the heavens. He's acknowledging, we are acknowledging He is a Father. He is in the heavens, wherever they are. That's not on earth. And then our Father in the heavens in Luke. Then we jump down to 2, we go into all these supplications. Sanctify your name, but in Luke, let your name be sanctified. And then 3, in Matthew, let your kingdom come, and it's the same in Luke. And then 4, let your will come to pass as in heaven, also upon the earth. So apparently his will is not being taken seriously by many people on this earth because the will of God is being passed over for doing evil. And Luke has, let your will become as in heaven, also upon the earth, basically the same. 5, our bread, the sufficient, give to us today. And then in Luke, give to us our bread, daily bread sufficient for the day. Now you can see that King James, or the Lord's Prayer, the King James, which so many people know, the Our Father, is different, but not really. Our Father who art in heaven, how holy is your name, or hallowed be your name. Hallowed turned into holy, and now sanctify your name. It's not is, but it's an imperative to do it. How holy is, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us today our daily bread, daily, or sufficient is the word. Give us today our daily bread, and forgive us our debts as we forgive those who forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And here the Matthew, and forgive us our debts, not a trespass, as also we forgive our debtors. Somebody that owes. Are in the Luke, and forgive to us our sins, for also to them we forgive. Who? To all owing us. Forgive us our sins, and lead us not into temptation. And here in Matthew, and that you should not insert us for a test. In Luke, and do not insert us for a test. Temptation is a King James invention. They used the word for test, and they made it a test when it was God, and a temptation when it was the devil. But they're both, this is the same Greek word behind test and temptation in the King James. I just put it all under one word, test. Do not insert us, do not test. but lead us not into temptation. But rescue, but deliver us from evil. And we have as rescue, it's not deliver us from the wicked one in Matthew, but rescue us from evil. And one is a person, the wicked one, and the second is a situation of being evil. Why the difference? No, I'm not sure. And then, for of you is the kingdom and the power and the glory into the eons. And that is, I'm not sure which one it is. If it's one or the other or both of them, forgot to write that down. I missed it. Sorry. That is the Lord's Prayer. Acknowledgement of who God is. And this is what the disciples asked Jesus to teach them how to pray. And he gave this as a model. There's more to praying than what's in here. This is what Jesus told them. We can get into specifics, praying for people. It doesn't have any person here that you're praying for in particular, but we can pray for healing. That would be a supplication, and deliverance from something bad that's going to happen to somebody. And like now, the country of Afghanistan has went back to the Muslim radical, I don't know, call them radicals, but the Taliban, and they are going to put the Sharia law back in force. And apparently some Christians are going to be affected and maybe hurt, killed, we don't know. So we can pray for people that are in other countries that need our prayer, people that need to hear about God. And there's all sorts of things we can pray to. Now, the important thing is that we can pray to someone that listens to us. We're not praying to somebody that's out there in the ether that we don't see, we know nothing about, that doesn't deal with humans. But we have communication with God, and he listens to our prayers and acts upon them in whichever way he sees fit. And this is a wonderful thing that we have a God that we can do that. Then it begins, or it continues in verse 2, take heed to me and listen to me. So taking heed and listening is what we want from our prayer, from God. I was fretted in my meditation, and I was disturbed from the voice of an enemy and from the affliction of the sinner. Now, he was apparently meditating and thinking about God, and all of a sudden he hears something that's really bad that's causing him to not pray. Now, it can be other things also that can disturb the meditation and sin and becoming involved in extra things that are not really necessary, that take the place of our interests instead of praying to God, spending our time with something else that's really useless. And he continues about these people, for they turned aside against me for lawlessness. He's the ruler of the country, and they want to do something that's lawless, and that would apparently be against the law of Moses, I would think, maybe laws of the land at the time. And in anger, they displayed anger against me. So he's dealing with people that are hard to deal with. And we also may be faced with the same thing, especially if you're a pastor of a church and you're going to have people that don't like something you do or say and be angry against you. But God knows. And he says, my heart was disturbed in me. Now it's a figure of speech because your heart's not really disturbed, it just keeps beating. And dread of death fell upon me. So he was worried that he might die for whatever it was. Fear and trembling came upon me. So boy, he had everything disturbed, fear of death, trembling, fear, and people disturbed, fretted. You could write all these things down that we might be under one of these. These all of these. And Fear and trembling came upon me, and darkness covered me. And that's a pretty bad state of affair when everything is black and you don't see any light. But Jesus is the light and will bring us through the darkness. But being in the darkness is not a place that we want to be in. Apparently, in Greek mythology, Hades is a place with what they call the shades, and people, spirits that are going around. I'm not sure if you can see them or they take some type of a form, but they are in a place that's in a darkness, not black darkness apparently, but a dimness. And this is where the shades apparently supposedly are, and Hades can possibly be something like that. A man I saw in a testimonial on YouTube it was something like a professor dies and goes to hell, and he was an art teacher, became a pastor. He was an art teacher, and he went to France, and something happened. He ended up in the hospital. But he's seen all these things, and it's really interesting. There's a lot of those on YouTube. And I said, why shall he not give to me wings as a dove, and I shall spread out, and I shall rest? Why do I have to go through this, Lord? Why don't I just have wings as a dove? Why can't I just fly away and go find a nice perch, sit there and look at all the things going off and have a good time and spread out my wings, have room and being at rest? Why can't I be like that, Lord? Why can't we be like that? Why do we have to go through these tests, Lord? Behold, I was far off, being driven into exile, and was lodged in the wilderness. Now, Asaph, and who he's talking about here, this doesn't say David, somebody, whoever wrote this was, into exile in a wilderness. I waited for the one delivering me from faint-heartedness and the gale. And we wait, and we're delivered by Jesus Christ from the faint-heartedness, the gale, and many things, many other things. Faint-heartedness, and we see the problems that we have, and they look like Mount Everest, and we have to climb them. And we go, oh man, I can't do it. It's too much for me. I can't do all these things. I can't handle all this. And then the gale comes and blowing at us and causing distress and worrying about the house falling down or a tree falling on, all kinds of problems, because when you're faint-hearted and then all of a sudden, whammo, you get hit by something that's even harder. But he says, sink them, O Lord, and divide their tongues. And now them, I believe, is the enemy and the sinner from verse 3. So sink them, O Lord, and divide their tongues. Well, he's not going to divide your tongue, cut it and divide it, but the language, make it so it's ununderstandable. Not understandable? Divide, let me see, is this right? Divide their tongues, for I saw lawlessness and dispute in the city. A lot of problems going on, especially here in this country, near 2021. Lawlessness, somebody just killed a person in a grocery store in Memphis, Tennessee, and shot another 12 people, and just horrible things in a lot of the big cities. I am not going to get into politics, but it's pretty bad in a lot of these cities in the United States. Day and night it shall encircle her upon her walls. That is the lawlessness and dispute. And it did in Jerusalem until it was taken by Nebuchadnezzar. God had enough of it. Day and night it shall encircle her upon her walls. Kiklo, cycle, comes from that, going around. And lawlessness and misery will be in the midst of her city. And injustice and usury and treachery cease not from out of her squares. And reminds me of when Jesus went into the temple and they were using usury, exchanging the common currency for the temple currency, which wasn't really worth as much, but yet they made him give more. Usury. If a bird normally would sell for $1, but when they changed your money to buy it, they would only give you like 50 cents. You'd have to put up more money for the bird, twice as much as it normally would in the temple. For if an enemy berated me, I would have endured. Yeah, and if one detesting me spoke great words against me, I would have hidden from him. But you, O man, are like-minded. Now, who does this remind you of? Reminds me of Judas Iscariot. But you, O man, are like-minded. Judas was. He was with Jesus. He was chosen. Must have been like-minded because Jesus probably wouldn't have chosen him. A leader of mine, one of the 12 disciples. What more leader can you want? My diviner, somebody that he was spiritually involved with, who together you sweetened foods and ate together, we know that. And in the house of God we went in concord with all the disciples, the 12 disciples. Judas was in there. And let death come upon them. Now that I believe is the enemy and the sinner. And let them go down into Hades alive. For wickedness in their sojourn is in the midst of them. Now, what's he talking about there? Going down into Hades alive? How do you do that? Well, we have in the Numbers 16, Korah, one of the leaders of the Levites, and he was the son of Izhar, son of Kohath, son of Levi, Dathan, and all these. They rose up before Moses and men of the sons of Israel, 50 and 200 chiefs of the congregation, summoned counselors and famous men. They stood together against Moses and Aaron and said to them, well, let this suffice to you, seeing that all the congregation are all holy, and the Lord is among them. And why do you stand against the congregation of the Lord? And Korah's come after Moses. And hearing, Moses fell upon his face, and he spoke to Korah and to all the congregation, saying, God has visited and knows the ones being his, and the ones holy he led to himself, and whom he chose not for himself, he led not to himself. Okay, this you do. You take to yourselves censers, and they were like where they burned incense. Korah and all his gatherings, and you see him swinging these censers, and it's got a plate with his smoke, his incense is burning off of it. And put fire upon them, and put upon them incense before the Lord tomorrow. So come tomorrow. And it will be the man whoever the Lord should choose, this one shall be holy. Let it be suitable to you, sons of Levi. And Moses said to Korah, listen to me, sons of Levi. Is this a small thing to you, that God separated you from out of the congregation of Israel, and led you to himself to officiate the ministration of the tent of the Lord, and to stand before the congregation to serve to them? Is that a small thing? And he led you and all your brethren of the sons of Levi with you. And do you seek to officiate as priest also? Thus you and all your gathering are gathering together against God. And who is Aaron? That was Moses' brother, that you complain against him. And Moses sent to call Dathan and Abiram, sons of Eliab, 2 men. And they said, we do not ascend. Is this a small thing that you led us from out of the land flowing milk and honey, that is Egypt, to kill us in this wilderness, that you rule over us and be a ruler? And into a land flowing milk and honey brought you us, and gave you to us a lot of inheritance of field and vineyards. They had all these things. Would you have cut out the eyes of these men? We do not ascend. And Moses was weighed down exceedingly. And he said to the Lord, well, do not take heed to their sacrifice. I have not taken the desire of any one of them, nor inflicted evil on any one of them. And Moses said to Korah, sanctify your congregation and come prepared before the Lord, you and they, and Aaron tomorrow. And let each take his censer, and you shall put incense upon them, and each shall bring his censer before the Lord, 50 and 200 censers, and you and Aaron each shall bring his censer. And each took his own censer, and they put fire upon them, and they put upon them incense. And Moses and Aaron stood by the doors of the tent of the testimony, tabernacle. And Korah rose up against them, the whole of his congregation, by the door of the tent of the testimony. And the glory of the Lord appeared to all the congregation. And the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, sever yourselves from out of the midst of this congregation, and I will completely consume them at once. And they fell upon their face, and said, O God, the God of the spirits and of all flesh, if one man sins, shall there be upon all the congregation the anger of the Lord? And the Lord said to Moses, saying, speak to the congregation, saying, withdraw round about from the congregation of Korah and Dathan and Abiram to all the people. And Moses rose and went to Dathan and Abiram, and went with him all the elders of Israel. And he spoke to the congregation, saying, sever from the tents of these recalcitrant men, and do not touch of all as much as is to them. You should not be destroyed together in all their sin, to Nathan and Abiram, the two leaders. And both Nathan and Abiram left from the tent of Korah round about. And Dathan and Abiram came forth and stood by the doors of their tents, and their wives, and their children, and their belongings. And Moses said, by this you shall know that the Lord sent me to execute all these works, that they are not of myself. If by the common death of all men these shall die, and if according to the review of all men the visit of death shall be theirs, then the Lord has not sent me. But if by a visible manifestation the Lord shall show, and the earth opening its mouth shall swallow them, and their houses and their tents, and all as much as is theirs, and they shall go down alive into Hades, then you shall know that these men provoked the Lord. It's exactly what it's saying here in the psalm. And as he ceased speaking all these words, the earth was torn underneath them. The earth was opened, and it swallowed them, and their houses or tents, and all the men of the ones being with Korah, and all their cattle. And these went down, and all as many as is to them, alive into Hades. And the earth covered them, and they were destroyed from out of the midst of the congregation. Terrible thing to happen, to go down to Hades alive. Boy, it's finding it the hard way. And then he continues, I cried out to God, and the Lord listened to me. Evening and morning, just as Moses, evening and morning and at midday, I describe and report to God, and he shall listen to my voice. He shall ransom my soul in peace from the ones approaching me, for among many they were with me. So David's having a similar situation as Moses, and we are going through these situations, and we pray to God, and God can do some amazing things. I mentioned once before where a friend had a man that was on drugs threatening her and acting crazy, and she called me, and we prayed that God would take care of the situation. She called me a couple of days later and said, you're not going to believe what happened. I said, what? And she said, the man, him and his friend went into a garage and stole a lawnmower and the gasoline, and took off with their truck, and it turned over, and gasoline caught on fire and they were burned with beyond recognition. Wow, that's amazing. God shall listen, and the one existing before the eons shall humble them. He will do that. And then a pause, a little break. Then it starts, for there is with them not a bargaining, can't bargain with God, for they do not fear the God. Maybe you can't talk these people even in to God because they don't fear him. They're not afraid of God. They think they can get away with whatever they're doing. He stretched out his hand in the recompensing. And as I mentioned, recompense can be something good or bad, depends on the circumstance. If it's something you did good, you get recompensed by a reward. If it's something bad, you get recompensed with something bad. And they profaned his covenant, whoever these people were, with Asaph. He divided them into parts from the anger of his face, and their hearts approached. His words were made tender above olive oil, yet they are arrows. God's words are understandable, but if you don't want God's words, then they become an arrow, sharp points that go into you rather than healing. Cast, and this is a famous, cast all your cares upon him, for he cares for you. But in the Apostolic Bible, it's literally, cast upon the Lord your anxiety, and he will nourish you. So whatever you are anxious over, God will take care of it, nourishing by giving you what you need. He will not grant the just one for a tossing about into the eon. Now, he might be tossed about now, but not into the eon. Once the person is with God, then that ceases. But you, O God, shall lead them down into a well of corruption. Men of blood and deceit in no way should live half their days. But I, O Lord, shall hope upon you. So these people that are doing evil, God will lead them to corruption, Hades basically. Men of blood and deceit in no way should live half their days. Well, some of them live for a long time, though, unfortunately. But I, O Lord, shall hope upon you. No matter what's going on, hope keeps us going strong, keeps us going through the problems, because we see the hope, the reward that hope gives of being with Jesus. And there's all sorts of places in the Bible talks about the next life that will be transformed, and a lot of it's just beautiful. It's called Paradise, Paradisios, and we will be with Jesus in the New Jerusalem. Psalm 56, our next video seminar, David is afflicted by war. Find out about that if you join us, which I hope you do. Till then, God bless.